Hello, lovely. How are you? Hi, this is Dr. Neck. I'm the host of the Victorious Working Moms podcast. Thank you so much for listening. What you're about to hear is a remaster of an earlier episode. It's a great conversation with Doctors Chi and Ifeanyi Olele, owners of Genesis Psychiatric Services out in the DMV area. It was a great conversation. But I felt like with a busy professional such as yourself, you'd appreciate it being broken up a little bit. It's a little easier to follow a commute. There's great stuff coming out from Victorious Working Mom podcast. You can check out the website, www.victoriousworkingmom.com. Working on a whole new season. Might even be changing some more things up. So thank you so much for your support. And thanks for reaching back to appreciate some of the earlier episodes. More to come. Be blessed. Bye. And on with the show.
So just keep going, and given what is going on with, your spouse at that moment, be there to give that support. And just basically be there to give that support. Like for example, in our situation, he would be studying for his boards, and so I knew that was not the time to say like, oh my goodness, I miss you. When are you going to come back? Oh, this and that, because he's not trying to hear all that at that moment as he's trying to pass his exam. And it would be selfish for me to say that at that moment, because if he then leaves and moves back home, that's going to be taken out of the livelihood of the family, So I would have to keep those things on hold. And then once he would finish or take the exam or whatever, then I'd say like, oh, when are you going to come back? But I didn't want to be a distraction, and so I would just say communication, transparency is very, very important.
Yeah, and just to jump in.
I know.
Dr. Ifeanyi Olele. Just in case anybody was just listening, like, who that man voice on there?
Thank you. Yeah. And on the flip side of things, like during the relationship, the long distance, we would be having our like moments of, yeah, I miss you, but then it'll be distracted with exams. But for me, it got real when I had children and married. So that's when it was real. So because I'm there doing what we have to do as a resident, but then I have a family at home, a wife and a kids at that time. And so for me, I was wondering, man, I'm missing out on milestones. And my wife would always give me play-by-play of what was going on with the kids. And then for me as a husband, I felt sad at times when she's having a rough day at work, I couldn't be there to console her physically with her or be a presence in the house. So everything we had to do was via the phone. So that was the rough end of things of being in a long distance relationship, on top of little things you miss, like going on dates or like walking a mall, the simple things that you would see other couples do. So she would always say, yeah, our time, this will be a distant memory, and we'll have those moments. And it has, since I came back, I think that's what made our relationship stronger, from having that long distance relationship. And now that's why when we're together, I do value and cherish our time together because of what we experienced.
Now, it wasn't always easy though. Let's just keep it real. It wasn't always easy because I remember like Valentine's Day where we were apart, many Valentine's days where we were apart, anniversaries where we were apart, birthdays where we were apart, but I had to focus on the future and focus on like, okay, this is not going to be forever. Just because if I spend so much time thinking about what I'm not getting now at that moment, it might have been enough for him to just say, oh, you know what? Okay, fine. I'm going to move back home and I'll just not, do that. I couldn't focus on what I wasn't getting or what we weren't able to do at the moment. I had to think about like, okay, put it on pause. Just think about the future. This is temporary. There are many more Valentine's Day and holidays to come. And I think that, you know, by doing that, like now that he's moved back, you know, we made a promise that we would take at least one trip every year of just me and him, no kids, to kind of like just travel out of the country, do our thing. And since we've been doing it, it usually tends to be around Valentine's Day time, actually, that we tend to do this. But we now say that, okay, now he's done. Now we're back together as a family. We go on at least like one trip out of the country of just me and him, no kids, as kind of like, and that's something that we hope to continue to do every year for the rest of our lives.
That's awesome. If I could just summarize a little bit, and that if y'all had some other points on that, because I think, you know, for somebody that's driving or working out or something, like, you could miss it if you're not slowing down to, they're giving really salient points. Biggest thing I've heard Dr. Chicha and Dr. Ifeanyi both say is expressing your needs, feelings, being honest, being open, giving support, being understanding. You know, you have to kind of, sounds like you have to go into it with the best intentions and be thinking in the long haul, like not the temporary discomfort of being apart and missing out, but think about what's the end goal. And it's like they're enjoying it now, so it's like, hey, you look at the Insta, the YouTube, y'all seeing 12 years in the making, you know, they put in their work. You know, I saw along for some of that journey. They put in their work. So you see them cheesing it up now and traveling and getting flued out. It's because they were faithful and diligent when it wasn't easy and social media worthy. And that can be a real encouragement if you find yourself in that situation and it's real. You know what they're saying. I've personally experienced elements of that, and you have to be very driven and focused, but also not allow what we've talked about, resentment and misunderstanding, to build up. So that when you're finally together, you can't even enjoy it. Now, did you all feel like you had to get you know, when you got to the point now, you're so far in, you guys are in business together. How do you readjust from almost living two independent lives yet married with kids to now having to really be in person co-parenting? Not the nitty-gritty of it, but just what are some of those tips or things you had to do to reintegrate as a family?
Yeah, it was kind of difficult on my end because for 4 years, I was by myself, and then she had her routine with the kids in the household. So when I came in, I had to get acclimated to their lifestyle, but I tried to switch things up, and it kind of threw things off. So I had to respect what she had going on and integrate myself slowly. There were some growing pains on my end as in that regard, where I was used to being by myself, moving and going the way I wanted to. But this time it was more like I had to factor her and the children and my movements and my decision making physically at the household. So that's what was one of the big differences or big growing pains. And then I was adjusting to a new job too, out of residency. So it was a good year, a year of growth, but we were able to lean on each other, talk things out. She began to see things from my perspective. I began to see things from her perspective. And I think that's what helped. And also what we had to make sure we do was be on one accord in regards to parenting the kids, because if they're getting two different messages, that could be confusing for them as well.
I think it definitely, as he said, it was definitely challenging, because, you know, ladies, when you kind of have everything in place, you have a flow going, you know how you want things done, you guys have a routine, and then he comes back, and then it's like naturally wants to also put it, like put in like certain things and implement certain things. And I'm just like, wait a minute, hold up. See, we weren't doing it like this. Like, what are you trying to come and change things up? And that, and it kind of, it was frustrating. But that was where we definitely had many conversations and discussions as far as like, okay, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna proceed? And then honestly, I mean, to be honest, like when he came back, it's almost like I felt like it was weird because even though I knew he was gone for like residency and schooling, and then he came back, it was just almost like I felt like, okay, now that you're back, take over. Like you've kind of been gone on vacation in quotes, even though it really wasn't vacation now. Take over and it's now your turn. But he, on his end, it was like, I'm still trying to understand what's going on here. And so I was just frustrated, like, why aren't you adapting as quickly as I thought it would happen? And I didn't realize that there had to be like a transition phase. But after some time, we finally got on one accord. And then we just continued to like, move forward. But it was definitely an experience and a readjustment when he moved back.
Because it's almost like you are transitioning into a new job, a new role, and it's kind of like you're saying you have to fall back on some stuff, and somebody else has to step up on stuff, and then with the children. But
and I just wanted to add this too, like as a woman, it was like while he was gone, I was like holding everything down, taking care of everything, all of that. And I was doing it because I felt like, that's what I'm supposed to do as a wife. That's what I'm supposed to do as a mother. Like, that's what I'm supposed to do. And then when he came back, it almost kind of felt like it felt like he felt like, oh yeah, she's just going to continue to do that. And in my mind, I'm like, no, like I'm done now. You're back. So you take over kind of thing. But then there were times where like, yes, I would say that to him, like, yeah, you take over now, you're back, all of that. But then I wouldn't be like, I'd be saying take over, but I really wasn't trying to let go. I still wanted to continue to, still kind of direct things and things like that. And it's, sometimes as women, we always say like, oh, we just want our husbands, man, just take over. Like, we just, da 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 da. But then the question is, are we really ready for that? Like we say that, but are we really ready for that? Like we'll say like, yeah, go ahead, change the baby's diaper. Then our husbands or, the men in our lives are changing their diaper. And then we're like, why are you doing it like that? You're not moving fast enough. But if we said for them to do it, let them do it how they want to do it and not how we think they should do it, because their way is not necessarily our way, but that doesn't mean that they're not different routes to still get to the same destination.
Ooh, help us somebody. Yes, you definitely some great points. Is like you're doing it all, but then you're mad that you're doing it all. But it's like there's some level of letting go, compromise, and giving the person room to step in.
Right.
Not over functioning, and it's okay. It's like you, and it sounds like now you getting massages scheduled, working out, and you looking good and everything. So let us. Let's some of that self-care. And I wanted to touch on something Dr. Ifeanyi said was about having to adjust the self-care. And for a lot of parents, whether you're the mom or the dad, that's a big adjustment from, okay, I was grown. This is how I deal with stress. This is how much time I can spend hours in the gym. This is what I eat. This is how I do my thing. I kick it. I have to call people, go hang out, blah, blah, blah. Then you become a parent. And all that changes. And it's really easy to get lost. And when you said, hey, I was, in residency out of state, and this is the way I So handled my self-care, time to myself, or re-energize after, a rigorous training. And then you get back home, and now you also got to adjust from being a resident to being a attendant, which we all know when you go from training to it's on you, it's a big adjustment. And also having to be live and direct in the needs of the children and partner take on. I think that's important for either side, whether it's a separation, being a part of just that transition period. How did either one of you deal with that, like the needs of being a parent and then not losing yourself?
Yeah, that's a big one. But here's the thing that it stuck with my mind with what I heard this from, I believe it was like Will Smith, or I believe he said this, like when you're like he made this analogy when you're on an airplane and they tell you about the putting on your oxygen mask to put it on, make sure you put it on first. And at first I was like, why you would want to make sure you put it on your kid? But then I thought about what he said, put it on yourself first, because if you have oxygen in your well, you're gonna be able to be alert, aware, and be able to take care of your kid and make sure that they're doing well. So that clicked it resonated with me. And with that, self-care is very important for parents, because if you're able to operate on all cylinders, you're gonna be even a better parent. So that's why with myself and my wife, our self-care, there's individual self-care, that also self-care for our relationship. And so for me personally, I have to make sure that I'm getting my self-care, because I feel that if I am mentally well, spiritually well, physically well, I could be a better husband to Chi-Chi. I could be a better father to my children, a better physician to my patients. So I think I need to make sure that I'm sleeping well, I'm exercising well, I'm doing the right things to stimulate my intellect, my emotions, and really focusing on being well. And I think wellness is very important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, I wouldn't have, yeah, like one thing is, I always say, like, in order for me to pour into my marriage and the kids, I have to have it in me to pour in. And in order for me and my husband to pour into our children, we have to be nourished and have enough to be able to pour in. So these breaks and things are very, very important. And I remember, like, we don't do it as much now, but I remember, like, I think the first year he moved back, like, we would have, like, just maybe we're just sitting around hanging out and we're just talking, and then we'll just randomly have, like, I don't want to say like a quarterly check, but it would be one of those, like, we'll just start having conversations, and it'll be like, how are you feeling? Is there anything that I'm doing that you don't really like, or anything within the marriage that you don't really like? Then we'll talk about it, and then I'll ask him the same thing, or he'll ask me the same thing. Then we'll talk about it, and then the things that maybe the other person is doing, then that the spouse maybe may not like, then we make an effort to, like, work on those things. And then when we have another, maybe months later, another discussion, we'll say, like, oh, do you see any improvements? They're, like, really making a conscious effort to, like, really work, in the marriage.
Yeah, and I think also working on your marriage is a part of self-care, because if if your marriage is a cause of stress, or even your job's a cause of stress, it's gonna have an impact on you, the way you interact with others. And I think that's very important to have, like, this type of wellness. So like for me and Chi-Chi, like we've had our struggles, but I feel that where we got us to a good place was more accepting each other for our strengths and weaknesses as professionals, because it's not easy, like, juggling. Like, I admire those that are able to be 100% with other stuff, but I feel that we have a time to ourselves, but also time for the relationship and time for your kids. So it's just a matter about juggling and seeing which ways more. And so some things may take a hit, like your the time to go out socializing with people, because I'm like, okay, I've been working all day, so let me use this time to spend quality time with my wife and kids. And so it's just more about balancing things out, or saying, if there's an organizational activity going on, I might say, all right, you know what? Let me do more family time, and I won't be able to go to this organizational activity. However, there are times where my wife would encourage me and say, hey, you know what? You need to go out there because this is going to improve your networking, improve your career, and vice versa. I'm like, hey, babe, I'll be with the kids tonight. You go out and make sure you go to that mixer or meeting, because it's very important for you to grow in your career as well. So it's a matter of choosing or picking your battles. And I think it's important for self-care when to say yes to things and when to say no to things.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Victorious Working Mom Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, share, and leave an iTunes review. Until next time.